Dynasty mode is the most exciting part of college football 25. If you guys are on social media, I promise you it's all over your social media pages, whatever platform you're on. Let's go ahead and talk about how to select your guys' Dynasty team. There are a couple of things to think about whenever you're selecting your Dynasty team. Maybe it's your favorite team. Like for me, the West Virginia Mountaineers is by far my favorite team. If you guys watch any of my content, you know this. So I definitely will be rebuilding the Mountaineers at some point. But some other key things you could take into consideration are stadium size. Teams like the UAB Blazers, who have almost 50,000 people at every single game, are able to get a crazy stadium pulse as an underdog. ECU has some of the best jerseys and also some of the highest attendance possible at their games, with almost 50,000 people in the stands as well. And then you have New Mexico, which has a giant stadium and some really cool jerseys. You could also use some schools that have changed conferences. You got UCLA with a recent change to the Big Ten. They're going to have to travel a lot for all their football games. They're going to be major underdogs, and they start off as a 3.5-star team. Then we have the two new Big 12 schools from Arizona and Arizona State. Man, being a West Virginia fan that lives in Arizona now, I love this. ASU is a great place to start a rebuild. They're a struggling team. And U of A is a team that you could focus on getting over the hump, trying to make it to that national title game. They have some very good players this year, and they're a 3-star. Another great school you could think about rebuilding would be the Ball State Cardinals. They're in the MAC conference. I promise you, nobody is talking about Ball State. Everybody's focused on Kennesaw, Sam Houston. Those are also great teams to rebuild, but hey man, I want to see a Ball State rebuild. Another great school to think about for your rebuild is Cal. It's their first year in the ACC. They got that 3-4 multiple defense, and they have a really fun offensive scheme with veer and shoot. And then, of course, you got Colorado, man. They're in the Big 12 for the first time. It's an exciting school. They got some drippy jerseys and some exciting players like Travis Hunter. Another great underrated school that really nobody is talking about is the Kent State Golden Flashes. This is a 1-star school in the MAC conference. They haven't really won any games in the last 20 years, it feels like, so it'd be cool to see them be a championship contender. However, for my first rebuild, I'm going to do the UCF Knights. Now, in the beginning of starting your dynasty, you're going to have the option to be the head coach, an offensive coordinator, or a defensive coordinator. An important note that you guys need to understand when choosing those is you can still control both sides of the ball. Personally, I would like to put it on fast sim or super sim and only play offensive possessions or defensive possessions in correlation to whatever coordinator I am. But you can still play both sides of the ball as offensive or defensive coordinators. But I'm going to go ahead and select head coach. Now, the current head coach is very good. I could use him. His pipeline is actually West Virginia, and his name is Christopher Knight. He's a level 33 program builder. We're going to create a new coach. When selecting a new coach, there's going to be 3 options. As you can see, we've got motivator. Get your players to their best by boosting their ratings and composure. Nobody has it better than us. Then recruiter is going to be Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's. You scout faster and recruit better than any other type of coach. Tactician, boost your players' ratings on gameplay. Scheme up the big plays and let the visor fly. My obvious selection here is going to be recruiter. This is a best recruiting tips video, so we want to have our biggest advantages possible. When creating your coach, all of these are very important. Your offensive playbook and your defensive playbook can affect what 4-star and 5-star recruits will come to play for you based on your scheme. I'm going to go with the spread and the 4-2-5, but you guys should definitely take that into consideration. Alma mater really does not matter, but your pipeline does. Now, word around town is Florida players are a lot faster. So we're going to go ahead and choose Central Florida because we are based out of Central Florida. Man, we are UCF. I feel like we can get the distance from home and obviously that Central Florida pipeline. The bigger states like Texas, Florida, those ones are going to have North, Central, and South. So make sure to take that in consideration as well. Now for adaptive AI and no huddle style, I'm just going to keep those on balance, and I'm not going to touch my offensive or defensive aggressiveness. Okay, so on this first screen, you guys are going to see that my guy is a level 1 head coach recruiter. My job security is safe, and I'm a C- prestige. So right off the rip, we're gonna have the set up recruiting board and scout prospects. This is super important to get into in the off season because once that season starts, you are not gonna have the jump up on some schools like Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, all of your actual championship contenders. So the only way you can really get a leg up in the race is paying attention to your recruiting board and scout prospects in the beginning. So off the rip, here's our recruiting board. As you can see, we get 35 targets, 750 hours to use, and 35 scholarships to offer. I recommend not loading up your recruiting board with more than 20 prospects, as it can get a little bit time consuming and confusing. If you go over to the next page, we're going to have our prospect lists. And as you can see, the things highlighted in red, it's going to say need. That those are players that we need immediately at my school. And as you can see, both of these 4 stars at the very top are going to be based out of Florida, and my pipeline says 3. That means there's a high potential of me being able to recruit these guys just based off my pipeline alone, and we don't have any deal breakers. When that deal breaker sign is red, that means it is literally impossible for you to get them because you cannot meet any of their deal breaker needs. We're going to go ahead and target this right tackle and the right end. Then let's try to go ahead and dig into the recruiting needs of our team. So as you can see, we have some players at risk here. It's actually only our 70 overall tight end. And then when you scroll through all these, we actually have pretty high ratings for everything. We're a B championship contender. We don't have much program tradition, so hopefully we can improve that. We're starting at 117th ranked school with program tradition. We do have a really good coach prestige. We do have a really good conference. Up next, we're gonna have our team needs. As you can see, everything highlighted in red means we need some players at that position. Right now, for our center position, we really don't need anybody. We have 4 on the roster that are pretty decent overall, so we're gonna try to knock out some of these things highlighted in red. For defense, it looks like we basically need just about every single position. So our team needs seem to be almost all positions. So we can almost just recruit anybody we see on our board that looks like they might have a fit on the roster and get some real playing time. So now we're back on the recruiting board. We have 2 4-star targets right now that are in the top 10 and internationally ranked 4th in their position. So right now, as we can see, these 4 stars that we've marked, we are already in their top 4. So it's not going to take much to stay in their top 4 throughout the season. Let's go ahead and select some other prospects. I'm going to focus on these 4 stars in the beginning, and then we'll start to look for some people that aren't 4-star ranks. Okay, so if you guys click and hold down right trigger, you can actually sort all the prospects by any state, top prospects, and then you can select states. We're gonna look for the 5-star prospects off the rip and see if any of these guys can actually fall in our hands. As you can see, the #1 prospect in the country, he has a deal breaker that we can actually not meet. We're not even gonna take a look at him, but we do have some prospects in the top 8 that can fall into our lap here. We've got Amari Peters, who lands in our pipeline, as well as Ben Cutrera. He's out of Deerfield Beach, Florida. You guys can also go through your My Pipelines tab, which will show all these players as well. And as you can see here, Texas and Georgia are both falling into our pipelines. That's because of our coaching assistants having those as their pipeline. Those are very important when selecting your coaches after each season on deciding if you want to fire and possibly hire some new coaches. Okay, so now that we've selected some of our recruits here, we've got 14 on the board. Let's focus on the top ones here. We got Brett Washington, who's a right tackle. Now, if you go over to Brett, we can go to scouting and we can actually scout his statistics and it will tell us if he's a bust or a gem. So as you can see here with Brett Washington, we used 30 hours to decide whether he was worth it for our roster, and he's not a bust or a gem, but he has some pretty good statistics, so he's definitely somebody that we're gonna wanna go ahead and offer a scholarship to gain some influence over these other schools. Offering scholarships early can give you a major jump on all 4-star and 5-star recruits. As you can see, we're gonna be competing with teams like Georgia, Miami, and Florida, even Florida State down below. We got a lot of Florida contenders that he falls into their pipeline. So if we want to get him, we do need to be a little aggressive here if we want to get him. We can't schedule any visits because we have to wait till he gets it narrowed down to his top 5 schools, and we can't knock out any actions this week. As you can see, for our next one, we have a right end, Brian Crozier. We were able to go through his scouting, and as I was going through his scouting, he actually came out as a gem. This means that as a 4-star recruit, he is actually a 5-star. His ratings resemble a 5-star recruit. So we're definitely going to want to go after Brian Crozier. Let's go ahead and offer Brian a scholarship so we can take the next steps whenever they're available. We have another gem right end here in Jamie Pino, and he comes out with some pretty cool mentals. He's got the natural, road dog, and clear-headed, so we know he's going to play really good away. We definitely need to offer this guy a scholarship and be ready to take the next steps down the road. As you can see, we have a lot of Florida people in his thing, so pipeline and proximity to home are super important, but he is based out of Miami, Florida, so we low-key lose the battle to the University of Miami right here. When you are looking at players, especially in the 4-star to 5-star ranking, pay attention to that deal breaker that shows us in the bottom right of our screen. As you can see, his deal breaker is proximity to home. We have an A+, and he at least needs a B-. He's based out of Lake Mary, Florida, so we have a pretty good chance here. Let's go ahead and go over to our scouting and let's scout him. So it looks like he is based off as a 4-star recruit. He gets field general, mobile deadeye, and off platform. That definitely falls into our needs, so we're gonna go ahead and offer him a scholarship. And when you offer them a scholarship, as you can see, that proximity to home, A+, we already meet those needs. And we're going to be pretty good in just about every single grade besides program tradition. So as I said earlier, players can be a gem or a bust. As we were going through DeAndre Fung, he turned out to be a bust. As you can see, he doesn't have very good deep ball accuracy, but he does have a 90 throw power. Now, DeAndre Fung still could very well be a great player, but he is not a 4-star recruit. That's what the game is telling us. His stats actually resemble him being a 3-star recruit, but he does come with gold road dog, so he might be pretty useful on our team. So we're going to go ahead and still offer him a scholarship. Now, when you are looking at your players, pay attention to where you are starting off in their top 8. Right now we're starting at number 7, but we are an A+ proximity to home, so that means there must be some deal breakers here that we don't meet. Those top 4 teams are definitely championship contenders, so it looks like Cam Burt might want to go to a championship team. Now, we won't be able to tell this until the season actually starts, but we will definitely be paying attention to Cam Burt. Now, when we selected our head coach, reselected recruiter, so it's very important to pay attention to what recruiter does for your coach. Now, if we select recruiter and go into the tab, it shows us we can do passing game, running game, receiving game, blocking, specialists, secondary linebackers, defensive line. We can actually choose to be better at scouting in certain positions. Now, we need everything. Now, before I select anything, whatever school you have, you want to check your team's needs. Now, in order to do this, all you're going to want to do is back out of this menu, all the way back to actions, go to setup recruiting board and scout prospects. You're going to click R3 and it's going to show you your team needs. Now, when I look at UCF, it looks like we need just about everything. So it seems that I'm okay to basically do my personal preference on what I think is going to win more games. Another key point that you should take in, besides just winning more games, is what your offensive and defensive coordinators' abilities are. For instance, my offensive coordinator, if you click on him, he's pretty good about just everything on the offensive side of the ball. Now, these abilities do stack, so if I were to select running game, we'd be very fast and influential at selecting running backs. As you can see, we have advanced look knocked out for just about everything on the offensive side of the ball. Let's go ahead and check our defensive coordinator. Our defensive coordinator does not have anything actually in recruiter, so I'm probably going to look to fire this guy at the end of the year, but he is a master motivator, which is bigger XP gain whenever a player levels up, which is actually pretty key when working with freshmen. But let's go ahead and select our thing. As you saw by our offensive coordinator, he's pretty good when it comes to the recruiting game. So we're going to go ahead and work on our defense a little bit ourselves. Let's do the advanced look on DBs and we'll invest more into that later. All right, so hopefully all of those tips were very useful to you guys. Make sure you guys are paying attention to that 750 hours in the top right corner. I've got 425 left. I've also got 28 more scholarships and a few people to target. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. Pay attention to those pipelines, get your team needs in order, and go knock out your first dynasty, man. Make sure you guys leave a like on the video on your way out.